Hello and welcome to the Real World Podcast. My name is Cameron, and today we are discussing our top five favorite films with our number four entries on our list. How you doing, Bert?
I am great. How's it going, Cam?
Doing well. My pick is The Lion King, and Bert's is Titanic. Be sure you give us a like, hit subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Share this video with your friends. If you're a film fan or you know other movie fans out there, be sure to let them know about the Real World Podcast. So we're going to go ahead and get into this now. We hope you enjoy the discussion. Okay, so on to our number fours of our top five list. We took a break last week for the Doctor Strange discussion, which was a lot of fun. But getting back now into our top five favorite films of all time, and we're discussing our number four picks. So we did number five a couple weeks ago. Mine was Empire Strikes Back, and Bert's was Back to the Future. So now we're into our number fours. We're going to discuss these movies today. Two films. One is The Lion King from 1994, the Disney animated film, and 1997's Titanic. So, Bert, your pick is Titanic. Let us know why you picked this as your number four favorite film of all time.
Okay, well, first of all, I have to say that if you can be in love with a movie, I think I'm in love with this movie. Unlike last time, our number five pick, Back to the Future. It's not that it's not a great movie, and it's not that it's not in my top five. But that one, I was thinking, is this still in my top five? But this one is going to move up in my top five. So this will probably not be number four by the time our top five is done.
Wow.
So it was amazing to go back and watch it again.
Yeah.
It's just been too long. It's just so great. And and there's so many parodies and stuff with this film, so that's unfortunate, but we'll get onto that eventually. But so Titanic, I'll say, first what I love about the movie without getting into too much detail, because most people have seen this movie probably.
Sure.
First of all, you've got one of the best visionary writer directors ever in Jim Cameron. I mean, he's basically never had a bad movie. He just doesn't make enough of them to have a bad movie, maybe. But he's willing to sink 2 decades into a movie, as we know.
Right.
So it's probably going to be good.
Yeah.
He has that luxury. But Cameron, you need shots of the actual Titanic. You just go down and film it at the actual Titanic. That's how he rolls. And then you need to have something that could pass as a recreation of the ship. Well, then he's just going to build the ship. And I think it's like 2/3 the scale or something like that. Right. And I think the original was like 900 something feet. So you're talking about 600 feet of it. And it's, as everybody knows, I mean, it's so, people might have thought it was CGI. I don't know, but it's painstakingly accurate.
Yeah.
And that's just what I love about directors like him that take you back in time, a specific event in history. There's many other directors that do that, but with a big budget too, he's as good as they come, and he just definitely transports you back to that time period. You really feel like you're lucky enough to actually feel like what it was like to walk in that boat before it sank,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so I think the script is really well written. I think some people disagree with that. I think that when it's a love story, I think that's probably the hardest thing to write. And I think that he does it very well. That's just my personal opinion. I think that you have two fantastic actors in the lead. DiCaprio just completely throws himself into this role. You buy him 100% as this guy, this, basically a younger guy that is just living life day by day and just, lives for the moment and just loves, has a zest for life.
Yeah.
And then, Kate Winslet, I think, just plays sort of this role of desperation just perfectly and beautifully. And just their eye acting, and the way they play off each other. Obviously, they definitely had chemistry.
Right.
It's just such great performances.
Yeah.
So then, then we have the effects. And I'll say this about the effects. When I heard there was going to be a Titanic movie, I was a little disappointed because Cameron made, Terminator, The Abyss, True Lies. That's probably as quick as, series of movies he made in a row.
Sure.
And then I heard about Titanic, and I think I'd already maybe heard some of the stories about how it was going to be a disaster because it was over budget.
Right.
And the film was going to be a disaster,
Sure.
not the
Right.
story.
A disaster
Um,
of a disaster.
yeah, and so at one point, I remember the trailer came on TV. So I mean, I remember this now, and it's been 25 years. I remember the trailer come on TV, and I had pretty much no interest in seeing this movie. But there's the shot in the trailer of Jack and Rose. They're on the edge of the Titanic when it lifts up in the air, and the camera sort of turns and looks down. So essentially 900 feet down into the water, and you see people falling and stuff.
Right.
And my jaw just dropped. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? And it was pretty early into CGI
Sure.
time frame, and probably that was CGI, but it
Yeah.
just I was like, oh, he's doing that.
Yeah.
He's doing that kind of thing. And so I
Yeah.
definitely went to see it and in the theater as soon as I could. And I'm making a list of the most impactful films that I saw in the theater.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
this is definitely probably in the top 5 on that list too,
Wow.
because I went to see it with my sister, and I'm telling you, there were people that were weeping
Yeah.
toward the end of the movie
Yeah.
in the theater. You could hear people crying,
Wow.
and maybe I was one of them.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah.
I mean, I did not have dry eyes. Let's put it that way.
Sure. Sure.
I probably
Sure.
kept the sobbing to a minimum, but it was just that impactful. Like it was
Wow.
just such an epic
Mm.
period film,
Yeah.
and it just the emotion that runs through that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just it was that impactful. And watching it again this last week, obviously I've seen it quite a few times now, so it doesn't have the same
Sure.
impact per se.
Yeah.
But I was just blown away again by all that goes into this film.
Yeah.
You've got the class warfare thing is always interesting. It's always a great plot,
Right.
looking at that kind of thing. And obviously Titanic hits it very well. Talking about the people that are like steerage class or whatever the lowest class is compared
Right.
to like Jack shouldn't be going up to talk to Rose or
Right.
anybody like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that kind of stuff is always fun in movies.
Yeah.
Usually.
Right.
And then of course then you have the thing of there's a lot of references about women sort of being lesser people than men.
Sure. Sure.
Cameron obviously specifically wanted to include that, and
Right.
I think that was accurate. I think
Yeah.
that it sort of adds to the authenticity, because it's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
it was a lot different 100
It
plus years
was.
ago. We didn't have
Right.
those same liberties, and weren't all treated the same. And so
Sure.
he points that out. And then it occurred to me that when they're loading up the lifeboats,
Right.
what's interesting is that then the men all say, well, let's let the women get on the boats
Yeah.
and let them
Yeah.
sail to safety at that point.
Sure.
And I find that pretty interesting dichotomy. Of on one hand, it was completely unfair to women, a lot of things in
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
and yet they were also revered in some ways.
Sure.
But
Sure.
clearly there was things were just kind of off.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just
Right.
wasn't lining up right. But I think the
Right.
film does a very good job of exploring those things too.
It does.
And so yeah, so that's kind of some of the thoughts I had after rewatching it. I've
Yeah.
probably seen it 10 to 15 times.
Okay.
I did see it was re-released maybe 7-8 years ago in theaters in 3D.
Oh, right.
And
Right.
yep, so I
Yeah.
couldn't wait to go, and I went, and there were like 5 of us in the theater, and we all enjoyed it in 3D.
Great.
So and it was really good in 3D. It's not one that has eye-popping moments where things are jumping out of the camera,
Sure. Sure.
but it's one of those that they meticulously transferred it, and it does look pretty great. And I
Yeah.
have it on 3D on Blu-ray, and I
Okay.
watched it in 3D Blu-ray again.
Oh, great.
And yeah, it just looks fantastic. The 3D only
Excellent.
adds to the depth of those kind of shots of being
Right.
way up in the air and looking down. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's a
Wow.
spectacle. It's just
Yep.
I mean, it'll probably end up number 2 by the time we get
Okay.
through this
Wow.
top 5 list.
Great.
And I have some more thoughts about the the criticisms and
Sure.
the parodies and stuff, but I want to hear some
Sure.
of your thoughts about the movie first.
Yeah. 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 No, those are great. It's a great way to kick it off. To get your perspective there, because having seen it in the theater, I did not. I was 4 when it came out, so I did not see it in the theater, but my grandmother did. This is probably her favorite movie of all time. She saw it 4 times when it was in theaters. She's a huge fan of this movie. She's a huge fan of period pieces like this, as is my wife and my mom. I asked my wife, why do girls like movies where they're marginalized so terribly? And she said, well, and this movie is actually a great example. It's because typically the female lead breaks through those societal kind of constraints that she's under, right? And that's very much Rose in this movie. She's the hero of the film. I think, clearly. She's the one with the arc. Jack kind of comes in and mixes up her life. He's kind of the catalyst of it. But it's very much her story. And that's accentuated by the present day bookends, right? So we have those present day scenes with Bill Paxton, who's this treasure hunter, just, looking for the heart of the ocean, just wants to cash in on it. And she ends up, calling him and being brought over back to Titanic. And, so yeah, it's very much her story and her story of kind of breaking out of these restraints that have been put on her, of having to marry this guy she doesn't like, and, what her mother expects of her and what, society expects of her and that kind of thing. So, yeah, Kate Winslet, is definitely the star of the show and does a great job. By the end of the movie, you see her at the beginning, in the big hat and coming out of the car with the, perfect dress on and everything. And by the end of the movie, she's swinging an axe and she's, going through the bowels of this ship in the water and getting all dirty and, becomes really the kind of action hero at the end of the picture. So, really cool, really cool. And definitely a great movie that I've seen a couple of times, not a ton, not as many as you. I don't remember the first time I watched it. I was probably a teenager when I first saw it. Watching it again, I've got the Blu-ray, and I remember watching the Blu-ray when I first got it. But it's been a long time since I've seen it, probably since I first got, the movie on HD. I don't know how long ago that was. It's probably been almost 10 years now. I don't know. But watching it again the other night this weekend, stunning looking movie. I mean, it just looks fantastic. Like you mentioned the effects. I mean, he employed every kind of effect that he had at his disposal. I mean, there's miniatures involved, there's CGI, there's everything that he had to work with, and he was very innovative in how he used all these different things. Like you said, he built a 2/3 scale of the Titanic itself, to shoot on, and they did a lot of shooting right there. It was at port, and they would shoot the scenes that were on the deck so that you would get the real ocean in the background, things like that. He didn't use a ton of CGI backgrounds for a lot of the scenes that are actually on the deck of the Titanic, which was pretty neat. I was watching a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, and they went through all that. So it was pretty interesting. Yeah, I definitely like this movie. I mean, it's great. It's a great film. Like you said, it's spectacle mixed with all these great themes, these historical aspects, Um, and so, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I wanted to go over just a little bit of info about the movie. It's, produced by 20th Century Fox, released December 19th, 1997. It's 3 hours and 15 minutes long. The original budget was 100 million. He ended up doubling that by the time shooting was over. He's notorious for going over schedule and over budget, but all of his movies
Yeah.
make money, so the studios don't really care. So it ended up having a budget of 200 million. The total gross to date is $2.2 billion. It is the second highest grossing movie of all time. Was the highest grossing for a long time until he made Avatar, which surpassed it. So yeah, incredible work by, like you said, James Cameron. I would put him on a Mount Rushmore of greatest filmmakers of all time, up there with, Spielberg and Kubrick and, maybe George Lucas or somebody. Just a guy who knows how to tell a story, who's also very interested in the technical aspects of filmmaking and furthering the technology, of how movies are made. He's very interested in that. He's always been at the forefront of that, in all of his films. Going back to the first Terminator, going to obviously The Abyss and T2. He's always innovating and creating this new technology to tell these stories. He reminds me of George Lucas in that way, and that he's, very much
Sure.
an innovator, at the forefront of this kind of technology of filmmaking. And so, I don't know how much you know about him, but he was born in Canada. He was a special effects guy. That's how he got into the business. After he saw the first Star Wars film, that's what made him decide that he was going to, go into the film industry, and
Oh
become a
wow.
special effects guy. So yeah, in '77 when he saw that, I think he was in college at the time, and he decided. I think he was working as a truck driver, and he said, "I'm done. I've got to start making movies. This is what I'm passionate about." And so, he
Wow.
jumped into the film industry. He got his first break working on Piranha 2: The Spawning,
Okay.
a little, B movie, that the director left the project like a week into shooting, and they just gave him the
Oh,
job. Basically, he wanted the job, so he took over, got to finish directing that movie, and then the success of that landed him Terminator, which he actually came up with the idea for Terminator after having had a nightmare, about a robot that was sent from the future to kill him. And so he, made that movie, of course, huge success. Aliens, huge success. And then, we catch up with him at Titanic, where he makes, the biggest movie of all time, wins 11 Oscars. Only three movies have ever done that in history: Titanic, Ben Hur, and Lord of the Rings: Return of the King.
well,
Swept all the major categories and won 11 Academy Awards, which is quite a feat. Um, so, like you said, I agree with everything you've said about it. The romance really works. Um, if you want to get into the criticisms, I I can see why people might criticize the writing or the acting. The reason it works for me is because I understand that what he's doing is, with those present day bookends, which are very grounded and real. They feel like a documentary, really.
yeah. Yeah.
When you're jumping from old Rose to young Rose, it's all in old Rose's head. So it's her
Yeah.
memories of what happened. It's kind of, almost like a dream of what she went through.
Hmm.
It's a romanticized version of these actual events. So that's why everything's a little exaggerated. Everything's a little, like the way they dress is so nice. It's so perfect. And I know they did dress that way, so it is historically accurate. But it's like everything's almost too perfect. Their interactions,
Yeah, the
every
diamond
character's
is like a $1 billion diamond probably or something like that.
right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, the way
Yeah.
the characters interact and talk, it's again, it's all coming from her memory. So that's why I think some people criticize it as being a little too, I don't know, people say it's cliche, or people say it's generic, or it's, too fantastical in certain aspects, maybe. But again, for me, it works because of the kind of, the framing and the storytelling that he used to set up this story.
Yeah, I
Um,
I completely agree. I
yeah.
was gonna say something along those lines, and you said it perfectly.
Okay.
Because
Cool.
I've heard some people say, "Well, I could have just done without the romance stuff. Just give
Right.
me the Titanic." And then I guess it would be more of an action movie or something. But the whole thing is, yeah, he sets it up to give you a vehicle, to take you through all this, and um, when you're seeing, Rose running through the hallway or coming down the stairs. I mean, you don't even have to look at her. I mean, you can just look all around. Like, it gives you the avenue to explore all of this, in a way that's not like just an average action movie or something.
Right. Exactly.
Speed 2
Yeah.
or something like that.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Or I recently watched, the Poseidon Adventure, which I guess he
Oh
took
yeah, which
some
one?
inspiration from the original.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
original. Yeah, I haven't seen the
Right.
new
Yeah,
one,
that's a
but
good one.
yeah, I'm sure he looked to that to see, okay, I'm sure he watched all the, shipwreck movies to figure out,
Yeah.
he doesn't, he's a guy, I'm guessing, doesn't want to copy too much, but he wants to kind of get ideas of how to shoot that stuff well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that was an interesting watch. But yeah, it works for me. And the movie is cool because it spends about, I think, 20 or so minutes on that present day stuff. But then the entire middle of the movie, I think it's almost like an hour and a half that you spend just with Jack and Rose on the boat, and you forget the ship. Sorry, you forget that, you're even watching a movie about Titanic. You forget it. You get caught up in the story of these two
Yeah.
people, and their conflicts with people around them, and that whole thing that
Yeah.
once the ship hits the iceberg, I mean, you kind of like, oh wait, yeah, I'm watching a movie about this ship's gonna sink, you know, and it's pretty
Right.
incredible
Right.
that he's able to pull that off. I mean,
Yeah, that's
that's a
true.
really difficult thing to do, and yeah, and then it kind of does turn into a kind of action disaster film.
Mhm.
And But we have that heart of the film of Jack and Rose that have taken us through the journey to make us kind
Yeah.
of care, right?
Yeah.
Because
Right.
I think if you had just done the straight disaster film, just told the true story of the Titanic, you might not have cared as much if you had just kind of been taken on the journey with a bunch of random people. There's so many people on the Titanic. I guess you could have covered one of the true life people, and there are actors playing real life people in this film.
Right.
And
Right.
we can talk about that in a second. But I think it works so well because you are with these fictional characters you can really put yourself in,
Hmm.
and go on the journey with them. So yeah, I think that's main reason why it works so well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people liked the fictional aspect of it, but just some people didn't. And I've heard more than one person say uh they all they do is yell each other's names, Jack, Rose, like throughout the film, and that annoys them. Okay. I mean, okay. And then of course, you know, everybody makes so much fun of the very end when she's on that floating door, and
Right.
there was definitely room for two on the door, even though he tries to get on it and about flips both of them off into the water.
Right.
But
Right.
I,
They did a
yeah.
Mythbusters about that.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, James Cameron went on Mythbusters, and they actually measured the door and like figured out, yeah, he definitely could have fit on there. And James Cameron at the end of the episode, he
Oh,
goes, he goes, okay, guys, but you're missing the point. The script says Jack dies, so Jack has to die.
yeah,
That's the
yeah, yeah. I
story
just
he's
think the
telling. You know?
the prop was a little too big. I
Yeah,
think that's what people had a problem with.
yeah,
And then it is kind of ironic that they're talking about never letting go of their dreams or this or that. And so the last thing she says to Jack is, I'll never let go, and then she lets go.
right, right, right.
But
Yeah, which
but that's not really what it means. But some people, I
right,
think, were like, oh, you'll never let go, but yeah, you just let him
but
go.
you just let him go. Yeah, and
I don't know.
that didn't bother me at all. I thought that was like
No,
kind of
no.
cool and poetic in a way. Like
Yeah,
she's because
exactly, exactly.
yeah, he's not saying he's not saying don't let go of me. He's saying,
Exactly.
he's clearly
I know
clearly
that.
telling
Yeah.
her, that she has to,
Right.
continue living her life for herself and not for other people.
Yes.
So yeah, to me all that works.
Exactly.
I don't have a problem with any of that. And yeah, I think it's a great film. That holds up very well, and the effects
Yeah.
still hold up very well and everything.
Uh-huh. I should mention the music too. I mean, obviously James Horner, his he does it's interesting. It starts out a little more of like a electronic score,
Right.
and mixed with an orchestral score, like when the ship first starts going, it's got this sort of punchy synthesized sound to it, and it basically
Right.
works. I mean,
Yeah.
the theme itself obviously is really good.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say that there's a woman that sings the sort of the main theme that runs through it. It's not Celine
Yeah.
Dion. It's
Right.
I
Right.
forget his name.
Yeah.
And so that's obviously really good and pretty iconic.
Right.
And then I think a lot of people make fun of Celine Dion's song,
Sure.
and you hear the song sort of throughout the movie too. The
Yeah.
bits from the song,
Sure.
not with the singing.
Right.
But I mean, I really enjoy the score.
Yeah.
He may overuse the part from the song, that sort of theme, a little bit too much, like upon
Hmm.
repeated viewings. But I
Yeah.
think what that does is, I mean, when someone's doing a score and they want it to be memorable, there's going
Yeah.
to be a lot of repeats of that same theme. So by the end, you're
Correct.
like, oh, this is a good score, because
Yeah.
you're catching on to it and picking up the melody and that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. It sticks out in your mind. I mean, it just, it's
Yeah.
memorable, and that's definitely something you want from a score, to where you hear it. To me, film score always should connect you instantly with the images on screen. So whenever I hear that, either the Celine Dion song or the theme, I instantly think of that movie. And that's,
Right,
to me,
right.
that's a testament of a great composer. And yeah, James Horner, one of the best. So yeah, to me, the music in it is excellent. Really enjoyed all that.
Yeah, and one more thing I'll mention about the score is when the ship hits the iceberg, there's a whole new part of the score that's introduced, and it's kind of this. It's these horns that are sort of playing ominously, and then the strings are sort of just kind of dancing in the background a little bit.
Right.
It's really amazing. I mean,
Yeah,
and most people are concentrating on the iceberg and the ice that's falling on the ship and
sure.
that kind of thing, but the music, especially there too, is really intriguing.
Yeah.
If anyone listens for that.
Great.
So
Great.
yeah, we'd mentioned last maybe it's 2 weeks ago when we did our number 5 film. There was a movie, was it Back to the Future, that gained in its gross on subsequent weekends?
It did. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you got Titanic, that it came out around Christmas time,
Yep.
and in January and on into February, there were multiple weekends where it would bring in more money each subsequent weekend, just weekend after weekend, just churning
Incredible.
away. And I don't
Yeah.
know of any other movie that's done that,
Yeah.
and I
There's
think some of it was timed with Valentine's Day, I think, but
definitely. Yeah. With two holidays there, that's pretty smart release date right there, right before Christmas. But yeah, very few films do that. I mean, that's extremely rare that a movie will come out and then the second week gross more. That only happens with good word of mouth. I mean, no amount of trailers or TV spots or posters, and that won't do that. It's only if
exactly.
an audience is responding in a way that, like I said, my grandmother saw it 4 times. She kept going
Yeah, I
back to
saw at
see
least a
this.
couple. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, a
yeah,
lot of repeat business. Yeah,
right, for sure. Yeah, and it's again, it's due to the spectacle, but also the story. I mean, if
yeah.
people like the spectacle, they might come back once.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't like the story, they won't come back.
Right.
They just, the audiences don't want to spend time with characters they don't care about. And so
Yeah.
yeah, that's why it's one of the best of all time. It just fired on all cylinders.
Yeah, I give it a 10. What is your rating for this film?
You know, right now
Or
I'm
a
at
five
a,
out
I'm
of
at
five?
I'm at
Yeah.
I'm at 4 stars out of 5 right
Okay.
now.
Okay.
I don't think it's a perfect film, and we can get into a little bit more of my criticisms of it in a second. But yeah, it's still solid all the way around. My criticisms are pretty few and far between. I mean, it's 4 stars is still a great rating. I just wouldn't
Hmm.
consider it a perfect film in my
Sure.
estimation.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, just wanted to mention a couple things that reasons why maybe I didn't give it a 5 star review, why it's not a perfect film on my top 100 list or anything like that. Um, I think the film is very well structured. I think at times it has pacing issues, not any major ones. The film was originally his first cut, I think, was about 4 hours. So we cut a lot of footage out of this movie. Little things that connect us, but nothing that is majorly noticeable. Just a few instances throughout Jack and Rose's story that I felt could have been maybe squished down just a little bit. Some of the stuff, I like their first meeting a lot. I think it's good. I think it drags on maybe just a little bit too long. It's really minor stuff with the pacing. I don't think it's a major issue, especially considering how long it is. Um, Another thing, I think the major criticism I have is that when you're dealing with real characters, you have to be really careful. And he even mentioned this. I listened. I actually watched it with the commentary on with James
Oh,
Cameron,
did you? Yeah.
and he actually mentioned this as a mistake that he made. Um, when you're dealing with real people, um, you can't you have to be careful with what you have them do and say. The one that stood out was First Officer Murdoch, who's featured throughout the film, and he's he's a great character. And at the end of the film, during the chaos of the ship sinking, um, in the script, he has this character shoot one of the passengers and then
Hmm.
shoot himself. Um, this is a real
Yeah.
guy. This is a real guy. There's there's no evidence that he did any of this.
Uh,
And the guy's family is still alive. And so they had some issues with this, which I could definitely understand. If this
yeah.
was your ancestor, this guy who, and he even said in the commentary, we only know that this guy was heroic. Everything that everyone says about this guy is he saved
Oh,
tons of lives. And so to have him do something like that, definitely left a bad taste in my mouth, and of course in the mouth of the guy's family, who's still
I
living.
could see that.
And so yeah, so and like I said, even James Cameron admits this was a huge mistake on my part. I should never have done this.
Okay.
This is
Well,
a
that's
real
good that he
guy who
owns it.
he totally owns it. Which I give him major
That's
respect
cool.
for. Most
Yeah.
directors probably
Yeah.
wouldn't even bring it up. So the fact that
Yeah.
he even brought it up in the commentary to say, "Hey, I made a
Right.
mistake here," I give him major props for that. But that's just one thing that
Okay.
didn't sit right with
Okay.
me, and
Huh.
I don't know a ton about the other characters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, the guy, I forget his name, who owned the Titanic, who was mostly
Oh,
responsible for this. I think they
yeah.
played his character pretty well. They didn't make him a total villain, but they definitely showed him with shame on his face when he's leaving in one of these boats.
Yeah. Yeah.
He couldn't even look back at the sinking ship.
Right.
I thought they did a
Right.
good job with him. They did an excellent job with the captain. And
Yeah.
I thought, the actor who played that role just did such a good job. And James Cameron
Yeah.
talked
He's
about
great.
how he actually wanted him to emote a little bit more and you give him a bigger performance. But ultimately, looking back now, he realizes that the actor totally did exactly what he should have done and behaved as a
Yeah.
captain would have.
He was just in
Um,
shock. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and Victor Garber's character, the guy who actually built
Yeah.
the Titanic, he does a great
Yeah.
job
He's
as
great.
well. So most
Yeah.
of the real life characters, they actually do a very good job with. Kathy Bates as Molly Brown, I
Hmm.
think does very good as well. But yeah, combining fictional characters around a historical event, it's very tricky. It's very
Yeah.
tricky, and I think most of the time he gets it right. But there's just a few instances where it feels a little off. Again, I can understand
Yeah.
people's criticism of this is a historical event. Bringing in fictional characters and telling this story through their eyes maybe is a little not
Like disrespectful or
disingenuous.
something.
Yeah, not quite that far, but yeah, maybe a little bit disrespectful to the real people who lost their lives here. So
Mm.
again, relatively, I would say minor criticisms. When you're looking at the film itself,
Yeah.
again, it's very difficult when you're adapting a real life story with real
Yeah.
people. And
Right.
again, most of the time he does a good job, but those were some of the criticisms I had.
Interesting. Yeah. The Murdoch thing. I mean, really, he just should have just left it as a nameless person, and then the
Exactly.
family wouldn't have felt it was such a direct attack.
Correct.
And Cameron's someone that tries. He goes to great lengths, as you know, to get things right. So that's
Yeah.
why it's interesting that he did that and made that deviation from what actually happened.
Yeah.
Because even things in the background, like I've watched the behind the scenes stuff in the past, years in the past.
Yeah.
And so like the scene where the little boy is in the background, he's spinning that top and that kind of thing. And that's from
Right.
an actual photograph, right,
Yeah.
of something that
Yeah,
happened.
it is.
And that's just something in the background that
Right.
actually happened. And
Right.
so Cameron is so sort of hell bent on getting that right that
Yeah.
he probably just didn't think it through enough. I mean,
Yeah.
you know how crazy it is when they're trying to make a film, and he
Oh
probably just didn't
yeah.
think that one thing through very well.
Correct.
So
Correct.
I get
Correct.
that.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention something too. You mentioned that a 10 would be a 10 because it's a perfect film. I actually look at it a little differently. I used to think that exact way. I used to think, no film is perfect. There's always something that I can
Sure.
attack it on a little bit. So,
Yeah.
and I would never give a movie a 10 for the longest time.
Right.
But then I guess I had to watch enough films for me. After so many years of watching film, I thought, if a movie can never get to a 10, then why is there a 10? So
Right.
I tend to be a little more liberal with it now. And
Sure.
so if a movie is the most entertained I've ever been,
Yeah.
that's definitely a 10. And the further
Sure.
away I get from that, it probably goes down a little bit.
Right.
But I
Right.
can
Right.
say now there's probably at least my top 10, or I would give a 10 or a
Yeah,
5 out of 5 or whatever, rating you want to call it.
yeah, sure.
What are your thoughts on
Yeah, I
perfect movies
have.
10s?
Yeah, I have. I think my entire top 100 is 5-star films actually. So
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty
Okay.
liberal with it as well. It,
Oh,
it comes
okay.
down
Okay.
it comes down to personal preference. It
Yeah,
comes
and
down
you
to
wouldn't say
things
they're all
like
perfect films, right?
no, 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 not at all. But for
Oh, okay.
me,
Maybe I heard the wrong thing from you.
but well,
So
I would say for me they are. I would say in my
yeah. Oh,
estimation,
sure.
for me,
Yeah.
for what I look for in a movie, I consider them
Yeah.
perfect.
Sure.
You know,
That I think we're right on there.
right, right. It's all about personal preference. All kinds of things.
Yeah.
We talked about it on the first podcast. Rewatchability comes into play, although it's not
Hmm.
the major factor. You know, every
Yeah.
aspect of the movie making comes into play, and your personal
Yeah.
connection with the film.
Hmm.
You know, if I had seen Titanic in the theater, it probably would be up there. It probably would be 5-star. Again, my experience with it is I've never seen it in the theater, so maybe that would bump it up if I got to see it in the theater. I don't know. So yeah, all kinds of things come into
Yeah.
it, but yeah, that's I'm very similar, I think, to you on how I look at what I give five
Yeah.
stars.
Yeah, I think if a movie, if you can just think of so many things that like this movie hits 10 points easy, just on based on the things I like about it. I
Sure,
think that's a better way to go than to be, because I can be too critical sometimes of
sure,
certain movies. I'll admit it.
right.
Um, but I don't want to be so critical that I can't ever have a 5 out of 5
Yeah,
film, because there are a lot of them, and in a lot of those, if not all of them, I could point something out that wasn't perfect.
sure, sure, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. So maybe I'll bump this up to 4.5. I don't know. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll take another look and bump it up. But right now it sits at 4 out of 5, which is
maybe in
again,
3D.
yeah, I would love to see it 3D. I would. I would. I think that would be
Yeah.
great. All right, so now we're moving on to my number 4 pick, my top 5 favorite films of all time. It is The Lion King, 1994 animated film. This movie happened right in the middle of the what's known as the Disney Renaissance. So this is an era in Disney's history where they kind of brought back the classic Disney feel. So you know, Walt Disney, pioneer that he is, created the first ever feature length animated film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Before that, animation was just little cartoons they would show before movies. And so he decided, you know what, let's make that a full length film. People will actually come to watch the animated movie. It wouldn't just be shown, you know, before something else. So he made Snow White. Of course, it was a huge hit. People doubted it, but it became a big movie and allowed him to, you know, create this empire that we now know as Disney. Um, After he passed away, there was an era where, you know, the studio was kind of lost. They kind of didn't know what to do. They did a lot of experimental films. There's some good films in there between, you know, the late 60s and all the way into the mid 80s. But it wasn't until 1989 when they made The Little Mermaid. They got back to that Disney princess thing, you know, that Walt did so well with Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, all these classics that made Disney what it is. And so Little Mermaid came out to huge acclaim and success. Of course, right after that, Beauty and the Beast, the first ever animated film to be nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. And then, you know, Aladdin. And after Aladdin was The Lion King. So, what was going on there during the Disney Renaissance was that after Aladdin, they had two movies that they were ready to make. One was Pocahontas and one was The Lion King. Right at that time, it was called King of the Jungle. And all of the veteran animators jumped on Pocahontas. They're like, this is Romeo and Juliet. It's a historical
Oh,
narrative. It's going to be huge. It's going to be perfect. This is exactly what everyone wants to see. And so they had to beg animators to help them make The Lion King. It was not what people thought was going to be a big hit. I mean, it was all animals and it was still a musical. It was, you know, very unique and definitely the bigger risk of the two.
hmm.
But they ended up making it, and it became the biggest animated film of all time. grossed almost $1 billion at the box office. And so,
Wow.
yeah, it's a huge feat. Released June 15th, 1994. It's an hour and 28 minutes long. The budget was 45 million, ended up grossing 968 million. And so, yeah, it's a big movie, and a movie that shaped my entire childhood, I would say, probably more than just about any other movie. It's
Wow.
probably one that I've seen the most, right up there with Star Wars. I would say this one. I mean, I had a Lion King birthday party. I had Lion King T-shirts and all the toys and everything you could imagine. My grandmother, the one I mentioned, who went and saw Titanic 4 times, took me to see this in the theater. I was only 2 when it came out, but I saw this in the theater, and got the VHS tape and wore it out. So it's
Yeah.
when
And
I've
a
seen.
2-year-old can enjoy a movie. It's true.
Yeah, actually
Yeah.
can. I don't remember it vividly seeing it in the
Well,
theater,
sure. Yeah.
but
Yeah. But I'm
um,
just saying it's worthwhile to take
it is.
little kids to the movies
I
because they do
agree.
enjoy them sometimes. Yeah.
I agree completely, and I
Movies like
loved
that.
it. Yeah, and so yeah, I definitely remember seeing it on VHS, and it definitely was a kind of a touchstone film for me growing up, and remains that. I mean, you know I this week in preparation for the podcast, I've watched it 3 times. So that
Wow.
tells you how much I still enjoy it. And I've watched it. It wasn't just watching the movie. I watched the movie, and then I watched it with the commentary on.
Oh, there is a
And
commentary.
then there
Yeah.
is a director's commentary. Yeah, Roger
Yeah.
Allers and Rob Minkoff directed the film.
Mm.
And they're just really energetic guys. They were really passionate about this story. It was inspired by, people have drawn comparisons to Hamlet, obviously. That was in there. The biblical stories, Moses and Joseph, were
Oh.
also inspirations
Oh.
there.
Okay. I can. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's inspired by, it's kind of an amalgamation of all those things. It's your classic
Mm.
coming of age story.
Yeah.
It's a story
Sure.
about responsibility, and so
Yeah.
yeah, it's just got timeless values, great characters. I mean, the characters are just so much fun to watch, interact, and um, the animation is incredible. I mean, it's really innovative when you look just at that opening circle of life scene,
Hmm.
and you see that sunrise. There's this shot of ants crawling on a branch, and the background is blurry, and then they do what's called a rack focus, and then they focus on the background, which is zebras running by. And stuff like that had never been done in animation before. I mean, these are
Oh.
live
Yeah.
action techniques that they're using in an animated movie, and it just
Yeah.
gives it this kind of sense of realism, and it grounds it in a certain way. Yet they're able to take it and do all these incredible things with the colors. I mean, it's just vibrant film. And so I enjoy every second of it. All the songs, of course, are classics, that everyone knows and can hum along. Elton John and his lyricist Tim Rice worked on this movie. Um, the directors didn't know why they were picking those guys, but they have such a gift for lyric and melody, that I think it worked brilliantly. And then, of course, they brought on Hans Zimmer, one of our favorite composers, who brought in that kind of African tribal sound to the score, which I think was vitally important. And he did such a great job with
And won the
all the
Oscar.
music. It won the
Yeah.
Oscar for Best Original Score and Best Original Song, for Can You Feel the Love Tonight. So many memorable moments. I mean, I have this entire movie basically memorized. I can basically quote the whole thing, sing every song.
Gotcha.
It's one of those, and it's one that I've enjoyed many times. Enjoy now sharing with my kids as well. They're singing all the songs around the house all week too, so it's been tons of fun. So those are my initial thoughts. I could talk about it all night, but what are your thoughts on the Lion King?
Yeah. And obviously, let me sort of set it up. to begin with. So a couple things. First of all, I don't animation is not my genres, or like one of the genres I really like. Like
Not a
I'll watch them
genre.
all the time.
We'll talk about that in a
Not a
second.
genre.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, okay. Well, if the film is animated,
Right.
uh,
I hear you.
I don't I don't watch those on my own. I'll watch them with my children. So
Sure.
like I'm always on the hunt for a good animated film that I can enjoy with my children.
Sure.
But I never, pretty much even the best ones of those, I never watch on my own because I'd just rather watch something that's more live action.
Sure.
And especially hand drawn. Sadly, I just I've never really cared for hand drawn animation.
Okay.
When Toy Story first came out, that to me was fascinating, and I really loved the 3D animation. So keep
Okay.
that in mind. And then the other thing is, I don't really love musicals either.
Okay.
And I'm not gonna say bad things about the music here. I'll say good things
Sure.
because it is good music.
Sure.
But I don't generally love musicals. I'd really rather just hear the characters talk.
Okay.
And so that doesn't mean I don't like some musicals. I mean, I even
Sure.
like Les Mis,
Okay.
and no one else did.
I like that one too. Yeah.
Oh, did you? Okay.
I did.
You and
Yeah.
me liked that one.
Right.
So keep those things in mind. Now it's very strange here because you mentioned the vibrant visuals, and I don't know where the breakdown was, because one thing I was going to mention is that when I watched the film, the animation seems kind of drab to me. and
Interesting.
and I don't know if it's the setting on my TV. Now I will say that the and I don't want to too much comparison at the moment, but the 2019 version
Okay. Yeah.
is very vibrant and a lot of light in it and that kind of thing. But a lot of the scenes in Lion King, I found just were so dark and kind of washed out. So
Okay.
again, I don't know if it was a setting on my TV.
Hmm.
And the other thing I meant to mention too is that I had never seen this film before last week.
Okay.
I had seen the newer one a few times, especially the first hour of it, because that's
Okay.
the one part my girls like the most.
Okay.
My daughters, and so then to go back and watch the 94 one puts it at a bit of a disadvantage, because it's kind of the same thing with like watching Empire Strikes Back for the
Okay.
first time many years
Right.
and years later. So I'm trying to keep an open mind and that kind of thing. So
Okay.
keep that in mind too. Is the first
Sure.
time I'd ever watched that
Sure.
film,
Right.
the original. So then okay. So do you want me to get into all my criticisms at the moment too, and just kind of go through those?
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
How
Yeah.
about high level? How about high level?
Sure. That's
I'd like
fine.
to talk more about it, but there's some questionable voice acting in the film, and I'll get into more
Okay.
detail.
Okay.
But what I did like, the story is really good. You know, it's a good film for families. You know, and the
Yeah.
original is very, especially kid friendly, and it's a fine film. You know, there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with
Sure.
it.
Sure.
The music is fantastic. I will
Yeah.
say, this isn't really a criticism. The beginning scene, Circle of Life, you know, the song and all that.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know why they don't just use Elton John's version, but I was kind of disappointed the first time I watched it, either version, because I'm thinking, I mean, it's essentially a music video anyway. You know, there's no one on screen, you know, mouthing the words,
Right.
but it's just it's like almost like a animated music video anyway. I don't know why they didn't
Sure.
just go full blown music video and just have Elton on there.
Yeah. I think they
um,
they wanted to they got actually an African choir. And
yeah,
so they
sure.
have like traditional African singers doing that. And I think
Oh,
they
okay.
wanted to have that connection with Africa, since it's all set there. I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
why.
sure.
And that's why the directors were actually standoffish when the producers wanted Elton John to come in the first place. They're like, that's not the look or feel we're going for, you know. And so
Right,
that's I
right.
think probably the reason they wanted that kind of
Ah,
African connection there.
yeah, yeah. And again, the singers that sing it are fine. It's just it doesn't really make sense to me that they're pushing the Elton version and the other version. But I guess one's for the radio and one's for the movie. I mean, it's not the first
Right.
film that I think has done that.
Sure.
So big picture, I feel like it's a fine old style animated film. It's got great music. It's more suited for younger kids compared to the newer one. I can get into more of that. But I felt like, at least the version I saw, that it was just kind of dark and kind of drab. I don't know why. I can give you a comparison. We'll get more into that. Um, and some things in the animation didn't really make sense, but again, it's a fine animated film. You know, I'd probably give it a 4. And not because it's bad, but just because I don't prefer to watch the hand drawn animation style
Sure.
films. So nothing really bad about it or offensive.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where I come in entertainment wise, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And that's, that's just, again, that's a preference thing. That's
It is.
totally,
Yeah.
totally,
Yeah.
totally valid, totally fine. Um, Growing up with that, you didn't grow up with Disney films like I did.
Right. Yeah.
So
I didn't really
yeah,
see a lot. I mean, they were out, but I wasn't really drawn to those.
right, right.
Again, the animation style, just for whatever reason. I mean, I watched cartoons growing up, but these
Sure.
are films. The animated
Right,
film is a little different.
right,
But I just didn't really care for that. I didn't really wasn't really looking for that out of film for whatever reason.
right, right. Yeah. No, okay. Yeah, that's fine. I can totally see that. At least you recognize it's a good story, because I don't think that's
It
really,
is a good story.
it's
Yeah,
hard to deny that. I mean, it's so
absolutely. Yeah.
timeless. It's so emotional, and
Mhm. Yeah.
so yeah. So I'd love to hear some more criticisms though, and we can, if you want to compare the remake as well.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Let's get into that. And you've seen the remake, right?
I
Um,
have a couple
and
times.
and I have not had a chance to watch any of the behind the scenes stuff, but from what I gather, it's real scenery and backgrounds with CGI animals. Is that right?
I believe it's fully digital. I
Oh,
think
it's fully digital.
yeah, I think they went
Wow.
to Africa to
Wow.
get some references.
Okay.
But from what I understood,
Okay.
it's a completely digital environment
Hmm.
and characters.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow, that's impressive. I
yeah.
Yeah,
He
and so
actually, you know what? I remember now. John Favreau, who directed it,
uh-huh.
who's a great director. I really like him a lot. But he said there is one shot in the film. I don't think he's ever revealed which shot it is, but there is one shot that is fully live action. I
Yeah.
think it's the
Okay.
opening shot, but I'm not
I wondered.
positive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So just as an example with the animation, there's
yeah.
a scene, and you'll know all these scenes really well, so that's good because I wasn't sure how
Hmm.
much setup I had to do.
Hmm.
But the scene where near the beginning of the film where um and I'm not great with the names, but so Simba's the little lion, right? So
Correct.
he's sort of bugging his parents to get up and they're sleeping, and he
Sure.
says he's your son before sunrise. So
Right.
in that scene in the 94 version,
Uh-huh.
it's the background is really, it almost still looks kind of like night, and it's really kind of dark, and it's just kind of, you know background is just kind of washed out. And then you compare that to the newer version, and it's like a real sunrise, like just before the sun comes up, and the
Okay.
scenery is back there, and it's beautiful, and you can see all the detail. Again, it's not a fair
Okay.
comparison.
Sure.
I think one thing, if I were to defend the older film, it's that I feel like the animation is more of like an impressionistic kind of take on nature. Like they weren't going for absolute realism. But
Right.
again, this is a preference thing. If I'm going to look at one of the
Sure.
two, I look at the
Sure.
one where they're laying there and they don't want to get up, and the beauty behind them is just, amazing.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what grabs me. So
Sure.
I want they're both art.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
there's
Absolutely.
nothing wrong with it.
Yep.
But that was one example of where I feel like, just at least my preferences with the newer one.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I totally hear that. Yeah, yeah. I think it's going to come down to a preference thing with as far as the backgrounds and scenery. Yeah, the new one. I mean, it's incredible what they were able to do. I mean, it feels like you're watching a nature documentary. I mean, it's like you turned on Animal Planet. It's like whoa, incredible that they were able to digitally create this entire environment, these photoreal animals that move naturally,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's a stunning technical achievement. I cannot deny that at all.
Yeah, I read at one point a while back that they didn't want the animals to do anything that the animal can't actually do. So in the 94 version, they're doing backflips and stuff like this. And in the new one, they stick to only what an animal can actually do. So there are a lot of different choices there. The film's a lot longer for one thing. So I think I don't know why that is exactly. I haven't like done scene by scene comparisons.
Yeah.
Um, But so another example of the visual difference is that like there's a scene toward the end. It's right before the final sort of Scar versus Simba, and the hyenas. Simba is dangling over the cliff, and shortly after that, there's the fire that breaks out. And at one point, the hyenas are in the background, and it looks like they're standing in the fire. Like I don't know if you've noticed that, but it looks like the fire is they're literally in the midst of the fire.
Right.
And again, this may sound picky, but I'm thinking, what are they going for there? Like I don't really get why that exists in
Right.
a high production Disney film, because
Right.
they weren't trying
Right.
to burn the hyenas. Like that wasn't what they were trying to do.
Right. Right.
That was one example.
Yeah. I think that you're talking,
My way
I'm
off
sorry,
base here.
that whole Scar scene is what you're referring
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
Yeah, I think all that, and this is the biggest difference between the two, right? Is just what you said. The original animated film is not at all going for realism.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
telling a story with animals,
Uh-huh.
but those animals are characters. So,
Hmm.
and here's my problem with the new one: they don't feel like characters in the new film. They feel like
Really?
animals. To me, they feel like
Oh,
animals,
true. Yes, I see what you're
right?
saying now.
So
Yeah,
so they
that's
went
true.
they
Yeah.
went so far into realism that
Uh-huh.
that they're no longer they don't emote. There's I have no connection with the story or the characters because the animals can't emote the way they do in a hand-drawn film, where you can give them eyebrows, you can make their mouth do whatever you want, they can jump around. To me, the original, yeah, I'm connecting with the story and characters, whereas in the new film, I feel like I'm watching a documentary, but with voice acting over it. It's a
Yeah.
very the new one to me. It's a very strange experience. When I first saw it in the theater, I really enjoyed it. I think just because of again the technical wizardry involved was
Yeah.
mind
Yeah.
blowing.
Right.
Um, on rewatches, it's such a strange experience. I cannot get into it. As big a fan as I am of all the songs, and it has all the songs, and the dialogue is almost word for word. Some of it's even shot for shot.
Hmm.
The animated film, which is another problem I have because while as a fan I appreciate Jon Favreau's dedication to just remaking the original. At the
Hmm.
same time, I go, well, I can just watch the original and I can actually have a much better time watching that one because
Hmm.
I connect with it. And again, maybe it's because I've seen it a million times, but I've heard other people give this criticism as well as the new film. Um, Again, they just went so far into realism that there's no emotion on the characters' faces. Like if you take a scene of Simba singing "I just can't wait to be king," his like joyful song, he's having tons of fun, and then you cut to Mufasa's death. There's no if you just take an image of his face, there's no you can't tell, is he happy, is he sad? I mean, again, the voice acting does some of that, but
Yeah.
you can only take it so far. And so and to me again, watching I did watch the remake again, and it just to me the voice acting even falls flat, and this movie has a great cast. um
Really.
to me the
Let's
voice
talk about
acting
that for a
fell
minute because
flat.
I thought the voice acting was. Well, let's just get into it a little bit.
Sure.
Um, Matthew Broderick.
Yeah.
Okay, keep in mind I've watched a few times the newer one and then had
Okay.
never seen the older one.
Right.
I was shocked that Matthew Broderick was doing the voice work that really I mean he doesn't have a lot of range as an actor. He basically plays the same Ferris role in everything he does,
Right.
he kind of sounds a little bit like kind of whiny and kind of wimpy,
Okay.
in my opinion.
Okay.
And I don't think he has a lot of range. So
Okay.
then, who do we have in the newer one?
It's Donald Glover.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think he is um, very, very has a lot of range, and also there's times where he needs to be stoic and commanding near the end, and I
Mm-hmm.
think he totally nails that. And I
Okay.
don't think Broderick does. at
Okay.
all. And so that, yeah, I mean, let me give you another example. Jeremy Irons is a great actor, but this guy, how do you say his name again?
Chiwetel Ejiofor.
Right, right.
Yeah.
He is fantastic in the role of Scar. Just he gets to open the film basically, right, with the dialogue,
Right. Right.
and his voice is so suited for that surly lion, that's been all yeah,
Disenfranchised. Yeah.
yeah, that's a good way to put it. But I mean, and his voice is very low. It sounds like he could definitely be the brother of James Earl Jones.
Right.
Um, what I mean by that is like they both have that sort of low commanding
Sure.
voice.
Sure.
Um, and not that Jeremy Irons does not. In fact, he has kind of a radio voice himself.
Yeah.
But I preferred the much more serious tone that the newer one brings to the role. And I
Gotcha.
like a more serious movie though too. And I'm not
Sure.
thinking about like what would appeal to kids. I'm
Sure.
saying the one I would want to watch,
Yeah.
like right from the very beginning, he is menacing.
Yeah.
The voice acting is fantastic, I think.
Okay.
So not to discount Jeremy Irons because he is
Sure.
very good.
Sure.
But with the Broderick thing, I really was just shaking my head. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like to me, it was
Okay.
every time he talked, I'm like, no, I don't want to hear Ferris Bueller doing these lines.
Right.
Yeah, it was bad. And then, there is some great voice acting in the original, like Nathan Lane is great. But one other I want to mention is Robert Guillaume as
Yeah.
Rafiki. Is that
Yeah.
it?
That's it. Yep.
Okay. So I don't know. There's times in the original, brief times, where how an actor will do some voice work and you get from behind the scenes stuff that they'll say, okay, why don't you just make some different noises, and in case we
Right.
got to grab something that's a little weird or something,
Yeah.
that way we got like a sample pool to grab from.
Sure.
And it's almost like there's a couple times where they said, you know what, just jump around and just do all kinds of just crazy stuff.
Right.
And so he did it, and then they kept all of it. They used all
Right.
those weird like things that he was doing,
Yes.
and it just made no sense for the character. I mean, mind you, it's an animal, so
Right.
but I just felt like what are they doing? Like I just like looked around when I was watching it, and I don't know, am I way off on this too? I mean, it's just very bizarre for what the character called for with that whatever that guy's name is that I just said.
Again, I think it's our different perspectives of, well, first of all, you've seen the remake more, so your idea of Rafiki is a much more quiet, calm.
He's all business. Yeah.
All business.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Whereas that's not my Rafiki. I don't know what they were doing with that new Rafiki. He had no personality whatsoever.
Correct.
I was shocked.
Correct.
I was going, who is this? Is this a different character? I don't even know. I didn't recognize.
He's an animal with
all.
No expression. That's what he is.
Exactly right. So yeah, I love Rafiki. I mean, Rafiki, he's probably my second favorite character in the whole movie after Simba.
Didn't you think it was a little bit out there a couple times, the way that he was just like
totally
all kinds of flips and just
totally
zany stuff?
Yes.
And it didn't really serve the story.
Second.
It was just like, okay, be zany.
Right.
Why though?
That's his character. That's his personality. It's kind of like Yoda. He reminds me a lot of Yoda. Yoda's very silly in Empire Strikes Back. He's like banging on R2-D2,
his lines.
He's doing all this silly stuff.
Nutter completely.
Yeah. I love that. Like the wisest guy in the kingdom is also kind of got maybe a few screws loose. Maybe, it's that kind of idea. Yeah. It's almost like it kind of reminds me a little bit of Doc Brown from Back to the Future a little bit. He's a little zany, a little weird, a little out there. He's doing some weird stuff, but that's the character for me.
Okay, so then what about the Broderick thing? I know I probably know where you're going to come in on this, but I just could not buy him and his lines and his delivery.
I've heard it for so long. It would be hard, I think, for me to even try and criticize it. That's just Simba for me. I've never heard anything else until Donald Glover came along and did his whatever he did. That's him. I don't listening to it again, it didn't bother me at all.
So I think then you're coming in, you're watching the original loads and loads of times, and it's really hard to accept anybody else in the role. and then
Yeah.
I'm just basically pretty new to both,
Yeah.
and I'm looking at it, and I prefer more serious tone. And when
Yeah.
you do side by side of some of these lines,
Right.
I'm just evaluating based on like fresh, like which one I like to hear better.
Sure. Sure.
Um, yeah, I will say that I was thinking with Scar, I was trying to think who
Yeah.
he reminds me of, and
Okay.
in the newer film, he reminds me of Hans Gruber. He's like
Oh,
that. That's
interesting.
like the
Yeah.
the vocal work that is almost achieved.
Right.
Is that if Hans Gruber dropped in Scar's body, that is like the same level of evil
Yeah.
involved.
It's
Yeah,
true. Yeah, he's
that's
one
what
of
it
the best
reminded me
Disney
of.
villains. He's one of the best of all time, I think, because he does have a point of view. He does have, a mission.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I think you can kind of sympathize with him a little bit, maybe. Um, and that's always helps with a villain
Absolutely.
when they have a point of view.
Yes.
And I think of the characters in the remake, he's probably the best. Um,
Great. Just
the
great. I mean, I can tell you, as someone fresh to the both movies, basically,
yeah,
that voice acting for
yeah,
Scar is just that's what brought me into the movie. I started
yeah,
watching it. I'm like, oh, this is good.
yeah.
He
And it
right from the beginning. I mean, it's just fantastic.
right, and I think what's good about it is, unlike some of the other voice actors and unlike the movie as a whole, he really took it in a different direction, right? He
That's a good
didn't
way to put it.
he didn't
Yeah,
try to
yeah.
emulate Jeremy. I mean, you can't emulate Jeremy Irons.
Because
He's
yeah, Irons was
he's
fine. He was good.
he's iconic. I mean, that role is truly
Yeah,
iconic. I think
yeah.
I would put it as one of his best roles he's ever played.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really enjoy that role, and
Sure.
all the sarcasm he puts into it, and all, I mean, he's just so emotive in that film. And his line delivery, I think, is just spot on. But
It is. It's
yeah,
just a little sillier, which is
it
fine.
is.
But
Right, right. It's more,
but
well,
it's
the whole
yeah.
of the 2D film is so much more theatrical in every aspect, from including the music. Like I said, the new one has the music. I just don't feel it. They
Mm,
re-recorded all the songs, and for whatever reason, it just
yes.
does not
Yeah.
connect with me, like the
Mm.
original does. So yeah, but I would agree that Scar is a high point, of the remake, because again, he just did his own thing with it, and did it well.
Yeah, and I do get your criticism about the there's a lot less facial movement, and so you don't feel the emotion or see the emotion on their faces like they do,
Right.
like you can do with an animated one.
Yeah.
So I get that. I just sort of really enjoyed several viewings of this film that was just very understated and serious.
Sure. Sure.
and
No, and
and
that's
and
your
honestly
thing. Yeah.
not for little kids as much as the original.
Sure. I totally agree. Yeah. There's intense moments, and there's intense moments in both, but in the live
Mhm.
action, they're obviously, well, live action. They're going to be much more intense, because looks like it's happening to real animals. Um,
Right,
so it's
right.
intense on a different level. Where I would say
Hmm.
the original is, intense because you're connected to these characters emotionally, and
Hmm.
you kind of feel for them and connect with them on that level. Whereas the new one, it's like, oh no, this is a real animal. Again, it's kind of like watching a nature documentary in a way.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, it's
So
good.
yeah, I again, there's aspects I enjoy about both, for sure. But the new one, I just, again, if I can't connect with a character, um, or a story on a certain level, I'm not going to be as interested or engaged. I wasn't very engaged watching the new one.
Hmm.
Whereas
Okay.
that original, as soon as it starts, there's just something about, and the opening sequences are basically the same, but there's just something
Yeah.
about the way they animate it, the way Rafiki puts, the paint on Simba's face. There's just these things that, they're emoting. I think Rafiki even gives Mufasa a big hug when they first meet. These things that just connect me with the characters and make me relate to
Mm.
them, not as, again, an animal I'm watching in a documentary, but as a character I'm watching in a story. That's, I think, the
Yeah.
disconnect for me. But again, technical achievement. I think John Favreau did an incredible job. He's one of these guys that is kind of at the forefront of this technology now,
Yeah.
with this and Jungle Book, which I enjoy his Jungle Book movie a lot more,
Was that the
because
16 one?
yeah, 2016's Jungle Book,
Yeah,
which
that was
is
good. I saw
mostly
that. Yeah.
CGI. You have the human actor
Uh-huh.
playing Mowgli,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, that was good.
even the animals in that film I felt were much more emotive.
Mm.
They would use their eyes more and their mouth
Ah,
more, and body language.
yeah.
Whereas this one, they kind of stripped all that away.
Well,
Um,
I that could be really a credit to the quality of the story. The fact that I only saw the newer one with the less emotive characters, and I still
right.
thought it was effective. You know,
Yeah,
so I mean
that's
that
great.
says something. You know.
Yeah, absolutely it does. Absolutely. Yeah, the original, writers and directors of the original Lion King film that came up with that story just really knocked it out of the park. I mean, they made an all-timer, one that's going to just be passed on generations from now. And it'll keep getting retold. I'm sure there'll be some other version of the Lion King in 20 or 30 years. So yeah, it's a film I, again, immensely enjoy. I'm glad it's endured as long as it has, and I'm glad you at least gave it a shot and watched it, and enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Um,
if it's on, I'm not upset. I don't think
right,
it's a bad film. Again, this is
sure,
for my viewing. It's not like
right,
how much did my kids like it? Like they're
yeah,
gonna, give it a lot higher, probably. But I'm just thinking
sure,
for my own enjoyment,
yeah,
So there's
yeah,
nothing wrong with the original.
right,
It's fine, you know.
sure, sure.
Anything you don't like about the '94 Lion King?
I mean,
It's
I
it's
don't think
perfect.
I don't I think it is. I think it
Yeah. Hey,
is.
fair enough. Fair enough. Okay.
There's
Okay.
there's yeah, with my top, I mean, pretty much all of my top five. I think I mentioned a couple criticisms about Star Wars, but yeah, I mean, this one, I don't see anything. I can't think of anything. Rewatching it this weekend, I couldn't come up with anything. I have a smile on my face the whole time I watch it. I really do.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It's one of
Yeah.
those movies that's just
Okay.
stuck with me. So yeah, yeah, I can't say I have any criticisms. It's a 5-star, perfect movie.
Yeah, I'm 3.5 or 4 on
Okay.
it. Or I'm sorry, the newer one. Because I
Oh, on
did
the
say
newer one.
before,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, sorry, I did say before that I'd probably give the first one a 2 star.
Okay.
Again, not to knock it, but that's just
Sure.
the entertainment value to me. And
Sure.
then newer one, 3.5 or 4.
Okay.
I do like it quite a
Gotcha.
bit. I still don't know if I'd watch it without my kids, but possibly
Right.
because I just enjoy the visuals
Yeah.
and it's a good story.
Yeah, it is. And you mentioned, I want to circle back to this. You mentioned the environments and the color palette a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, I think we're on two different ends there. I think there are moments, certainly in the remake, where um, sunlight's coming through, it's hitting stuff,
Yeah.
water
Yeah.
or plants or
It's hard to
whatever it
compare.
is.
Yeah.
But yeah, the original is to me so much more vibrant in almost every location. Particularly once he gets to the jungle with Timon and Pumbaa, particularly in the musical sequences, when he sings "I Just Can't Wait to Be King." Specifically, that I mean, that whole entire sequence transforms, and you kind of get in Simba's head, and everything's like bright red and bright green and bright blue, and there's all these crazy colors going on as he's singing
Sure.
that song.
I was
So
thinking more of the nature scenes.
sure, sure, sure. Yeah, the nature scenes, I can definitely see that. But yeah, some of them were kind of dull to me in the remake. But again, they're going for realism, and when you're dealing with a desert, or certain locations are just going to look a little flatter because that's how the natural world looks. Whereas in the
Right.
the original, they can accentuate things a little bit more, give the sky a bluer sky, greener grass. They can do that kind of thing. So
I think I needed to watch it on Blu-ray or something.
yeah,
I
I
saw it on streaming. I don't know why. I was just thinking, why is this so like washed out and dark?
yeah,
And I wasn't trying to be critical, so I
right.
don't know. It could just be the version that I was watching too.
Maybe, yeah. Because even in the like the darker scenes, like I think of "Be Prepared" when Scar's singing that in the original. There's this green smoke and green fire coming up,
Mhm.
so there's all these splashes of color even in the darker scenes. So, yeah, I really like
Okay.
the visuals of it. It's also, I'll mention, one of the first 2D hand-drawn animated films to incorporate computer-generated imagery. The entire wildebeest
Oh,
stampede is computer generated.
oh, really?
So yeah, all those
And like
wildebeests
even
are
the original, it was because
in the
that was
original as well. Yeah,
after Jurassic Park. It was after Jurassic Park came
it was
out.
a year after. Yeah, it was a year after
Yeah.
Jurassic, and so in
Okay.
order to do this big wildebeest stampede, which goes on for
Oh,
quite a while, they
yeah,
decided to
yeah.
employ CG, and it looks great. It's really seamless with the rest of the 2D animation. A lot of times when you bring 3D CG into a 2D environment that's hand drawn, it can look very odd and very kind of be off putting, but it's pretty seamless the way they did it here.
Hmm. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did see Tarzan in the theater. I think that was
Oh yeah.
99 or
Yep.
8 or something.
99. Yep.
And I think that was hand drawn, right? I mean,
It
it was the
was.
older style.
Yep.
And they probably did it ended up using some CG in that too. Then I have
They
no
did.
idea, but I remember that one was very vibrant. And
Yeah.
of course, the theater experience is going to be the best way to see it. But
Yeah. Oh, and
um,
I'll mention I did
so,
get to see you went and saw Titanic when it came out in 3D. I went and saw Lion King when it came out in 3D. So they did a 3D release.
oh, how was
Um
that?
oh, it was excellent. It looked great. I
Oh,
was
so
actually
it enhanced it.
it did. I was surprised
Okay.
because for a 2D flat hand-drawn image,
Yeah.
they were
Yeah.
actually able to really, I mean, they must have spent a lot of
Yeah.
time on it because there were moments that really popped out,
Uh-huh.
and you got the depth on certain scenes, and yeah, it was
Nice.
really stunning.
Hmm.
So if they ever
Cool.
release it again in 3D, check it out.
Yeah, maybe I'll take my one of my kids to it or
Yeah.
something. Yeah. Okay.
As I was looking at both of these movies this week, doing some research, I found a quote by none other than George Lucas. And he has a quote where he says, "A special effect is a tool, a means of telling a story. A special effect without a story is a pretty boring thing." And I think both of these movies, we see that clearly with Titanic, right? James Cameron is using the special effects to tell this story. It's not all about the effects and the spectacle. And Lion King, I think, looking at both versions from my point of view, when Jon Favreau made the remake, I think he was very caught up in the technology. And George Lucas is I think guilty
Yeah.
of doing this himself a little bit. Getting so caught up in the technology that you kind of forget you're trying to tell a story here as well.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. With
And
those
so,
prequels.
yeah, yeah. And so, it's important, I think, for filmmakers, to keep that in mind because it can be easy to get caught up in that whole idea of, wow, look what we can do. It's like, it reminds me of Ian Malcolm in
Jurassic
Jurassic
Park.
Park.
Yeah.
Your scientists were so caught up in whether they could, they didn't stop to think whether they should. So it's kind of that idea of
Right. Right.
should they have remade The Lion King? Did it
You
need
know,
a
that's
remake?
yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking when you said that. I thought,
Yeah,
it is kind of a curious movie to even try to do
right.
a live action or so-called live action
Sure.
in which you create rules such as they can only do things that real animals do
Right.
because people like you are going to be sorely disappointed
Sure.
after you've watched the original 98 times.
Right, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, it's important to think about that kind of thing. And but again, there's going to be people like you who didn't grow up watching the original who get a lot out of the new one, and that's great. I think that's wonderful, And so, yeah, just an interesting quote there that I thought I'd bring up. That's important to
Yeah,
think
that's
about.
interesting.
Yeah. So, well, that's the Lion King and Titanic, and so we got through both our number fours. We'll be jumping into our number threes, I guess, next week. And so, continuing the journey here through our top five favorite films of all time. It's always great to get unique perspectives on films that we like and why we like them, and discover, why other people don't, or things like that. So, great talking to you, Bert. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Likewise.
We'll go ahead and hope to see you next week. Be sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell to get notifications, and we'll see you next time. All right, everybody. Well, that is our discussion on our number fours of our top five favorite films. We'll be jumping into our number threes next week. Make sure you join us for that. Be sure to like the video, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, share the video on social media with your friends. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. Leave us a comment with your reviews of both of these movies below. Thanks for joining us.